Hi, I'm Ted Haftegabber, founder and producer of Live Talks Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us. Since we started over a decade ago, we have brought you hundreds of conversations with storytellers, writers, actors, musicians, humorists, chefs, and thought leaders in business and science. You can watch and hear most of these in our YouTube channel and our podcast. For details, visit livetalksla.org. And now, here's the show you've tuned in to see.
This is so exciting.
Oh, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Hi, everybody. How y'all doing?
Okay, so let's jump right in, shall we?
Go
the
for
great
it.
Constance
Yes.
Wu, you stared down Michelle Yeoh in Crazy Rich Asians, and you won. How badass is that? That's so badass. That's crazy.
Actually, I lost on that mahjong game, but my character lost on purpose.
Oh,
that's
because I can't follow mahjong very well.
Me neither. They just told me that was
just
what was
looked
happening.
amazing.
Yeah.
So it felt like you won. You lost and won. So this book, if you haven't read it yet, it is so refreshingly not a conventional Hollywood memoir, you know, where you learn and then you have some spiritual thing that makes us feel better, and then there's vegetarian taco recipes and stuff like that, and health things. I love the food that's so Middle American. So can you just start by talking about the cover for a moment? If you see, it's a gorgeous cover, and maybe not exactly what you immediately expect from the rom-com queen of our time. So I think you said you were surprised by this cut. It was an...
Well, when choosing a cover design, I knew what I didn't want it to be, which, you know, my publisher, I actually had two different publishers at two different points, but, you know, artistic differences. You know, they wanted me to look pretty, like you know, like the cover of a magazine, or just like fun and like bright colors. And I'm like, I just don't, like, I'm sort of, this new chapter in my life is like, I'm over that game, and it hasn't ever really been representative of me. But that's what they wanted, both publishers. And then I found an artist that I really liked, he does like these weird like throwback 70s movies posters. His name's Jay Shaw. And I just contacted him. He lived in like Texas at the time. Now he lives in Seattle. But I was like, oh, I'll pay out of pocket, even if the publisher doesn't. Like, I'd like you to design my cover. And he said, and he didn't even read the book. He was like, okay, like, tell me a little bit about the book, and then like, I'm a visual person. I'll just throw you some ideas, and based on what you like, we'll go from there. And he gave me 5 covers that were so amazingly imaginative and like cool, but totally encapsulated the book. And it made me have a new appreciation for people who are like visual geniuses. And this was one of his first tries. I was like, that's it. We don't even need to do any more. Yeah. Although actually originally it was my mouth wasn't there. And then it was the same thing on the back, but it was just my mouth and not my eyes and nose. That's how it was. But then COVID happened, and like, you know, then the mask thing. We're like used to that. It was no longer a surprise.
So, okay, fans of your great acting career might be surprised to learn some things in this book, and we won't give everything away because, of course, you will all buy one if you haven't already. And you wrote, though I'm passionate about acting and theater, that was my second love.
Yeah.
My first love was?
Books. And writing. I used to really want to be a writer, not this kind of a writer. I wanted to be a fiction writer. I loved stories when I was a kid. But then I changed.
Yes, and the story about why you changed is in the book. It's mesmerizing. You must see it, the Mrs. Cantor story.
Oh, that's a fake name, but yeah.
Yes, well, yeah, I hope so. And I think what's great, and I think this book is, it's incredibly well written. It is, and the
thanks.
metaphors, the unfinished mansions are great, and there's some obviously hot button topics in the book that we'll talk about.
It's all anybody wants to talk
gradually,
about.
but
I'm like, I want to talk about making bread. You want to talk about sexual harassment? Bread is more interesting.
Okay, so let's go to the bread. Okay, fine.
No,
let's go to the bread.
to.
No. But you said your favorite job of all time was not Crazy Rich Asians working with J-Lo and Hospital like Fresh Off the Boat. It was
my very first job I got when I was 15 years old, working at a family-owned bread bakery in Richmond, Virginia. And it's still operating today, and it's the kind of place where we actually milled our own flour from wheat. Like, that's how fresh everything was. And, like, what it really means to make bread, which is really a recipe that has been, like, pretty much stayed the same for, like, centuries. And sometimes when I really think about it, I feel like an acting career feels flimsy next to something as substantial as a loaf of bread. This is a thing that has brought cultures together. This is a thing that is like truly, and so like, and it was just a great job, honestly, just because of the smells, the feel of the dough between your hands. I mean, like, talk about like sensory experience. And it truly, I really loved working there.
And I think that is so totemic. That's not the right word.
I don't know what that means.
I didn't know what it meant either. I went, okay, it is so characteristic in a way of how you write in this book, because I think the things that you love, and you talk about Virginia a lot, and it's a surprising sort of celebration of middle America, if you will.
Suburban bliss.
Right, and I
because I didn't have a traumatic childhood where I was bullied for being Asian. You hear those stories so much. That's not in this book because I wasn't. I grew up around all white folks, but they were so kind and warm and welcoming that I really feel blessed in that sense.
Yeah, and I think that there is a continual refrain in your book about you keep saying, "I am not cool," or it's not, and you kind of celebrate uncoolness. Can you talk about that a little?
Well, I try to celebrate it because I spent many years trying to be cool, and after repeated failures, I decided to just own up to being uncool. But it's true. It's like my favorite line in Almost Famous is that Philip Seymour Hoffman line where he says something along the lines like, "The only real things in this life are what you share with each other when you're being uncool." It's those vulnerable moments when you're not doing all the the magazine cover books, the pretty stuff, when you're just being real with somebody. That's where you find the stuff. And if that means being uncool, if that means somebody's going to scoff at me, okay. I'm kind of tired of like putting on the facade that is expected of me. I'd rather just be uncool me.
And so can you do an animal acting exercise right now? No, that's a joke. That's a joke.
Well, I have a couple. I act
yes,
like an
yes.
animal.
And I think that you talk a lot about craft. So anybody who is a writer or an actor who is in training, there's such great stuff that you write about technique and craft. And I think that you talked about the acting where what can you describe that where you have to find the animal inside the character?
Yeah, animal work. Anthony Hopkins did that for Silence of the Lambs. He did a snake for like his character, which you can sort of see those.
Yes,
it sort of just gets you out of your head and into your body, because like acting really has to have that magic where you're not analytical and thinking about your line and your motivation. It's got to get in your body, and so sometimes doing the animal work really helps. And that's something I learned in drama school. That we spent like a semester doing animal work where we, like this, I got a college degree in this, where we'd go up and we'd fight each other as our animals, so it'd be like lizard versus bear, and you just had to like, that was the whole class. I have a BFA in this, guys. That's what I did. And also another thing that I did with this book that I learned from drama school is a sense of memory. Anytime I had writer's block or I was like kind of stuck, I went back to whatever I was writing about, and I just went back to sense memory. Rather than the emotions or the theories attached to it, I just remember the senses. What did it smell like? What did the air feel like? What did it sound like when you were like rubbing your shoulder? And just focusing on those sensory elements sort of got me out of my hole, and in a weird way was kind of healing. And that's one of the themes of the book, that art is healing. And art for me was theater, community theater in Richmond, Virginia.
And I think that those passages where you do that, like in the Of Course She Did chapter, and also Exploring an Orange, is this incredible chapter that will catch you completely by surprise.
Either that or you'll think I'm so stupid.
No, you won't. And I think
you might think I'm very ridiculous, and it's okay.
I think to unpack, like to see that sense memory explored in writing makes fantastic writing, and it's such a seamless connection between your acting and your writing, which is so great. Okay, so to go for a moment to, I mean, you talk a lot about family in this book, and your essays about your little sister and the mystery of your
my favorite
parents,
one, yeah.
about Snap and Whistle.
Yeah, my favorite one.
And why is it your favorite?
I think because I haven't read much like it. It's about a sister relationship and the complexity and the love, but the continuing evolution of it. Even now, our relationship is evolving. She's going to have a baby in a couple weeks. Very exciting. And, like, that adds a new chapter. And then when I showed her the essay, like, a year ago, you know, hearing her reflect on my experiences, like, you know, when I went to middle school, we were best friends in elementary school. When I went to middle school, she started having her own friends, and it made me feel scared that she didn't need me or love me anymore. So what I did was pretended to be cool, pretended I didn't care. And what she told me now, as an adult in her 30s, she was like, it was surprising for me to hear that you missed me too. And her saying the word too, it made me cry. Because I was like, wait, you missed me back then? I thought you didn't need me anymore. And then we were able to cry about that and laugh. And it just continues to evolve, and I think it's such a special relationship, the relationship between sisters. I feel very bad because I didn't write about my other two sisters, like, at all. But they were, like, a lot older than us. And me and my little sister, we were, like, kind of like a pair, you know, because we're, like, 2 years apart. So.
Okay, so when you're talking about your sister and that essay, of course, and you get to, you didn't cry in that moment. You talked about crying. But in that, you have that great line where you, like, are trying to talk to her about what happened in the distance, and you write, and can I use an F-bomb here, Ted? Okay. It's in the book. It's in the book.
There's a lot in the book.
It's Constance's work. So you're talking to her and you start crying and you say, yes, I was a damn adult and I sobbed all that shit. I'm a fucking sobber. I hate it and I've tried to squelch it, but sometimes I just can't.
Yeah.
So you talk a lot about
crying.
Yeah. Can you tell us about crying?
Well, I'll tell you what. I did a press tour, like, I think it was last week in New York, where I did, like, all the, like, Trevor Noah, Drew Barrymore, Good Morning America. And I was like, I'm not going to cry in this interview. Like, I don't want to fucking cry. I cried never. But this one, I'm not going to cry.
No, Trevor Noah is handing you tissues.
He was.
We will fail if we don't get it.
They're talking to me about these really hard issues, which is not even what most of the book is about. But you know what's funny? Sometimes I think, like in my Nightline interview, I see the journalist's eyes when I start crying, like, oh my God, we got gold. And I want to be like, oh honey, you got the same thing everybody got. Like, it's not, you didn't bring this out of me. This is just me.
Okay, so we won't make you cry again.
I won't.
Okay, but we have the meta conversation about crying. So this is a book about having really big emotions.
Yeah.
And I think what I love, we were talking backstage, what I love about this is it's kind of a messy book, and you are still not like carrying the torch for two unnamed who were relationships earlier, and describe those conversations so realistic, so not tidy, so
Which ones are you talking about?
Ty was the guy that raped me. The guy,
the
theater guy, George.
George, not Ty.
Yeah, Ty was the rapist.
George.
Okay, George. Okay,
Fake name.
Okay, can you put in a little bit about George so people get like a little of the feel and texture of that? And I think those conversations were unbelievably fantastic.
What, that I had with George?
Yes, that were when you scripted them.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
Oh no.
No one's asked me about George, actually, in any of my interviews.
Oh.
George is this, like, 15-year love affair I've had, where it's like we dated and then, like, he broke my heart. And that's actually why I moved to LA, because he broke my heart so badly. I was like, I gotta get out. And then a couple years later, we dated again. This time it was gonna be different. Same thing. same thing.
You cry, we will laugh. I don't know.
No, I don't. I'm done crying over him. He's had way too many of my tears. I think in that essay I write about how like I really love sending handwritten letters, and like I'd send him dozens over the years, and these are like 10-page letters, and I kept every one he sent me back. And while I was writing, I went to look at all the letters he sent me. He sent me 4 in 15 years, and I was like, I've sent this dude like 75.
Was it one a postcard?
One was a postcard. Yes. So it was like 3 in a postcard. Oh, but I mean, it was cool because we were also friends for like 6 years, and that was actually the best 6 years because he was in a relationship, I was in a relationship, and it almost made the friendship safer because the possibility of romance wasn't there. And then when I got out of that relationship, then and then the same thing happened again. And I did give it to him a couple years ago. I'd be like, I'm going to publish this. Is this cool? And he gave me permission with a little caveat. But I had to stop talking with him, not because I'm mad at him, because I'm not. I still love him. I'm always going to love him. But because he's like kryptonite for me. Truly, I can't, like, yeah, I know. It's pathetic.
I mean,
remember about what I said about being uncool? This is the
And this was so great because I was talking to Abby backstage where it's kind of like there is not, and it is so great to hear you talk about something like that for many of us, because I would say there's not a man in this auditorium who doesn't desire you, or a woman who doesn't desire you,
That's
or a
not
trans
true.
woman. Like you're what? Look at you're Constance Wu.
Will
like,
you call him right now?
Yeah.
Will you call him that?
George. But I think also in look about the volumes of letters that you wrote and then the coming back, it struck me that sometimes women have big emotions, much bigger than the dude, and it's really not.
Yeah,
his
it's like
fault.
you'll write a text message this long,
Right.
and the dude writes sup.
So.
It's like, all right, cool.
But
I hear some guys like, I've done that. I heard some guys
laughing. Oh yeah, right there. Yeah. Don't call me, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So and
K. Just K. Sorry.
But that's part of I think that's part of the journey of this book of having big emotions, big unwieldy emotions. Sometimes there's too much for people.
Yeah.
And but that you use them, and I think with the crying, where you say you cry in every other circumstance, and now you cried your way through your press junket in New York last week. But isn't that sort of a superpower in some way to have access to them?
I mean, I've been going through a lot of therapy, and I think for many years I tried to not have big feelings because, like, the definition of being cool is being unaffected, being unemotional, and I tried. That didn't work. I'm in the phase of therapy now where I've accepted that I am emotional and that I need to allow it, otherwise it sort of festers and comes out in another place, like Twitter. That where I don't want it to come out later, like years later. And I think the next goal in therapy is for me to not just accept it, but actually like love it about myself. I wish I could say that I do, but I'm not there yet. I do think I've figured out a way to monetize it in acting. So at least I could do it there.
Yes.
But, you know, in life it's a little bit embarrassing. It's embarrassing to go on like national TV and not be able to not cry. That's embarrassing, but I get, oh well.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a superpower to show that emotion and to hold that line. And I think it's like when you talk about the Jurassic Park, the T-Rexes and Asian Americans, like if you don't move, right? You can't see if you don't move.
T-Rex,
so that you are moving and you're seen, and that does help a lot of other people, though.
Cool. I mean, I don't know.
Now you're cool. Now you're cool.
I mean, it's cool if it does. I don't know if it does.
But I think also, and I'm obsessed with the George thing, obviously. Obviously.
Me too, honey.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my God.
But you said this thing that was so interesting about, like, transforming it. You said a couple things. One is, you know when you've gotten over someone, when you can remember the memories happily of
when you
them.
think of them with fondness rather than pain.
Yes.
Because I think in a lot of breakups, I know, like, grown-ass men who are still like, oh, that girl was when I was 16. I'm like, oh my God, honey, get over it. But it's like, but when you can look back at it with fondness and gratitude and be like, oh, what a dumb kid I was, but how big my heart was. You know? Like, and how fearlessly I loved then. How much I wasn't afraid to be like corny or stupid the way I am now. And you look back at that with affection, which doesn't mean you do it today, but it's like, I'm glad I went through that because what a beautiful time. It's like, you know, like I have a 2-year-old. It's like seeing her taste ice cream for the first time. She's not going to do that when she tastes ice cream when she's 30. She shouldn't. Or maybe she should. But it's like, yeah, I mean, it's the first, I think I say in the first essay with Buck, I say there's this window of time where you're old enough for sex to not be new, but young enough to love without fear. And he and I met in that little special window of time. And I'm so grateful for it, even though it was a heartbreaking breakup. Yeah, it took me a really long time to get over it. But
and that's one of the journeys and adventures of reading this book, that it's so not a Hollywood memoir, because when you first described falling in love with Buck, and it was perfect in the restaurant, and you're adorable, he's
Caesar.
Adorable, and I thought it was going to end up being the story of like your husband who's now your manager or something, like, and it's so not.
No,
like
it's
every
not.
story zigs and zags in really a fantastic way.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I just want to
the end of George story, I don't want to spoil it.
Before we get to the before we drop George for a while for the rest of but I think also you said that you'd go in every crowd and just look at smiles on people's faces and see him. So in a way, it was a very spiritual path. Like your next book, in your next incarnation, you could be like a Pema Chodron, but for the next generation, because you also went to the Buddhist monastery, but you don't brag on. I mean, even that you look at with sort of a gimlet eye, if we'll say. Like, you don't brag about it.
Yeah, because I don't want to be like, I'm a sage, wise person, because, you know, I like fart and I say fuck and I like get jealous. No, seriously, and it's like, I'm so sick of people being like, all like, I don't know, trying to be something. And that's why I didn't like talking about, I didn't even want to write about the monastery, but my editor told me to, and I came to it in a weird way with the whole cheese ball thing.
Yes, like, can you just describe how the cheese ball comes? Well, then you have to read, but it's you find enlightenment.
It's really hard to get. I mean, I found enlightenment through a cheese ball. You know those like gummy orange cheese balls that are like you roll them up in like a crushed. They're like in the
like
the
a
crushed
Wisconsin,
almonds.
Yeah,
they're basically like a paste.
Yeah,
and then you put it on like a Ritz cracker. It's super salty and like gross, but like delicious.
Yeah.
I discovered my own prejudice and judgment through a cheese ball, and it made me understand that in terms of religion, which I feel like it's very fashionable to poo-poo, which I think is really sad, because I think religion has done a lot of small wonderful things for people that we don't hear about because they're not newsworthy stories. But a monk at the monastery I lived at, he said, it doesn't matter what religion you practice, so long as you practice it with the utmost sincerity. And that's a phrase that has stuck with me. So like, if you love that cheese ball with the utmost sincerity, like, great. Because when I was looking at that cheese ball, no, I was like, I was at a holiday party my dad took me to with his church friends. I was like home for the holidays. And I worked at a French restaurant in New York where we still had like Roquefort and Morbier and all these like fancy cheeses. And I was like judging this cheese ball. I was like, oh, these suburban people, they don't even know French cheese. And like, and I just realized in that moment when like the people eating the cheese were just so kind, the way all my neighbors were kind growing up. And here I'm like being this petty, mean, judgmental person over, and even though it was all in my head, it wasn't in my behavior. Like, your thoughts are things, and you have to notice where your thoughts are going. And I was like, you know what? This guy is practicing with the utmost sincerity when he put us all in a prayer circle and said, Dear Lord, thank you for this food and for these friends. You know, and I couldn't even let him enjoy a fucking cheese ball. Like, I am no better, truly. Like, sometimes we, you know, coastal elites think we're so much, but, you know, utmost sincerity. Let's honor that a little bit. That's what I was trying to do with that essay.
And you succeeded, and I think
good.
I think before going to a slightly larger topic, I think that also that the preponderance of the small is this cool I Ching that talks about small things, and I think that when you talk about pisha, masha, like your cars, can you talk? And I think these essays are so beautifully turned. They're perfect essays. They stand alone, even if you weren't famous.
Yeah,
and cute.
it's not a memoir. It's a book of standalone essays. They're not meant to be together, you know.
Yeah. So can you give a bit of a flavor of who Pisha and Masha are before?
Pisha was my first car. It was an '88 Chevy Corsica, and yeah, it was like I feel like every car I've had has sort of reflected who I am in that point. And she was really scrappy. We called her Pisha because I was driving around with my friend Abby, and we were like, "Your car's a piece of crap." And then it started to sound like Pisha Crap. And I was like, that's her name. First name Pisha, last name Crap. I'm like, even my Asian parents would call her Pisha. We had many cars. But they're like, oh, you'll take Pisha to inspection? Is Pisha okay? And like it was like having like a 3-legged dog that always had to be at the vet or something. And then, and then there was Masha was my Prius. And then there was the taxi cabs when I lived in New York. When I lived there, you paid for taxi cabs with cash. They didn't have screens.
Yeah.
And how things have changed now. Because the thing that opens that chapter is about how I used to get home from a long night of waitressing, and I just sit in my car, and even though my bed was like mere steps away, I'd sit in my car, and I would just listen to it settle. I wouldn't be on my phone. I wouldn't be listening to music. I just listen to the clicking sounds of my car settle. And it was like these moments of breath I don't think we get anymore because we're scrolling. And I miss that. But even though I know that, I don't listen to my car settle anymore.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe sometimes I do. Yeah.
So let us now unpack the Asian American thing for a moment, if we can. Great, I know you love it. But we can do it any which way you want. I mean, so I guess the big framework is sort of moving from Asian Americans having to be a model minority to actually more human, and I think that's been a journey of kind of swimming one way, of like upholding this Asian American thing, and then going beyond it, freeing yourself of it.
What's the question?
So the question, I guess I'm leaving it open-ended because I don't know how much you want to like.
No, but I mean, leave me with a question.
Okay.
Because I could talk.
Okay, so here's the question. So let me ask it as though I were like going like that. And
oh my God! You gotta do it then.
In Fresh Off the Boat,
yeah.
Jessica is a hilarious hilarious character, and so true, and so unique, and so whatever, and she has an accent, right? And you do her with an accent. So, and you got some heat for that from some. It's always Asian Americans who are the circular firing squad against other Asian Americans who gave you heat for doing an accent, and then you said, "Fuck it."
Yeah.
That wasn't really a question, was it? Okay. Yeah, okay.
I mean, listen, I think I put it really clearly here. Can I read it?
Yes.
I don't know if that was part of the thing.
Yes. I think it's in the later, it's
in the middle. Welcome to I had to read this.
Oh yeah, welcome to.
I wrote this 100% myself, by the way. Not a lot of actors.
It's so good. It's so good. Right.
Okay, I've heard. Wait, here we go. Okay. Not only was Fresh Off the Boat a success, it was critically acclaimed. There was a lot of criticism, too. The word stereotype got thrown around a lot, especially by Asian Americans themselves. Aren't you perpetuating stereotypes by playing a tiger mom? Why do you have to have a stereotypical accent? They all seem to be saying, don't you know you're in Jurassic Park? You move, the T-Rex can see you. It brought back the feelings I had as a kid, where I wanted to yell at the TV, shut up, go away, stop making me look bad. I don't want to be associated with someone who sounds like my parents. That's when I realized that my whole life, I'd let someone else's ignorant ridicule of my parents matter more than my actual lived experience of them. To lots of people, sure, my parents' accents sound like stereotypes, but to me, they're my parents. And I've heard lots of Asian actors say, I refuse to play stereotypical roles. I want to choose roles that could be played by anyone. They say that success will be when our Asianness isn't part of the story, when we get cast in non-stereotypical roles. I do not subscribe to this idea of success. That career ethos, that desire to shut down Asian stereotypes, is a reaction to a Hollywood standard that was created by people who do not know us. I got into acting to be creative, not reactive. There will always be people who don't get it. You don't make art for them, so why let their ignorant ridicule inform your artistic choices? There are real people who genuinely embody stereotypical attributes. Our mothers, fathers, our brainy cousins. I don't want to hide their voices or stories. They're human too. Stereotypes are not harmful for their mere existence. They're harmful for their reduction of a person or group. In many ways, I think that previously stereotyped roles deserve more representation because Hollywood really did them a disservice the first go around. And I think I go on to say, like, a good act. Yeah, because really, think about it. It is ignorant ridicule. Somebody made fun of your parents' accent. Hollywood made fun. What is an accent really, objectively? It just means you know 2 languages. What is inherently shameful about that? Somebody else's ignorant ridicule. Somebody who doesn't fucking know. They don't know that everything, your parents came over to another country. Even that journey is like a big thing. They learned another language. That's fucking cool. You're gonna laugh at that? Rather than me being ashamed of being like, okay, I don't want to do that. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna look at that person and be like, really, you're gonna laugh at that? How many languages does your mom know? You have to reclaim it, you know? And I worry. Yeah. I worry when people proudly reject stereotypes. I worry that almost reinforces the idea that people who embody those traits are inherently shameful. Because why else would you proudly reject them? Nobody says, I refuse to play beautiful superheroes. Nobody says that. Think about it.
Yeah.
I did.
And I wonder, because you're such a powerful artist, and it's sort of I just feel like your artistic decisions are so interesting and get to be you can make them and not have to sort of argue in the public opinion court about, stereotypes or this, that, or the other. But
I do have to, but
yeah. And how do you afford that for yourself? Negotiate the art part and then the public opinion stuff. I mean, I know you've had
2 feet on the floor, eye contact. When somebody asks you something that they think is challenging, this is why, when I do Q&As, and when we do a Q&A, guys, ask me whatever. I like challenging questions because sometimes I feel like, you think you're going to tear me down? I know who I am. And like just sitting in that groundedness is in itself a statement. So that's what I try to do. And I don't read the questions ahead of time because I like thinking on my feet. Because that's like that is a part of who I am. Being like, I never thought about it that way. Let's parse that out. I guess that's how I do it. I don't know if I do a very good job, but that's what I try to do.
So your book is dedicated to your daughter.
Yeah.
So what do you hope she might get out of this book, or what you as a mother, as your evolving mother, what are you trying to work on? Sounds like such a therapy thing, but in terms of being a mother, how do you see yourself or how do you embody it?
I think one thing that I have developed that I think a lot of Asian Americans in entertainment, because when you're in entertainment, you are a person who likes to have an image that's like, out there. One thing I think I've developed over the years is the ability to sit through discomfort, and that includes difficult emotions. And I think that's one thing that I'm glad I developed before I had a kid, because your kid's gonna go through a rough time. And so I think what I try to do with this book and what I try to do with my parenting is be okay with sitting through the discomfort of a lot of the true things that happen. Like a lot of people wouldn't admit some of the things I admit in this book. Even if they're like stupid, petty jealousies about like wanting to cut off a girl's hair or something. Like a lot of people wouldn't because they want to seem cool. And it's like being able to sit with that discomfort and use it as an opportunity to understand yourself rather than to judge yourself, I think is really, really helpful. And I think that's what I want anyone who reads this book to be like, you know what, it's like she could sit through this uncomfortable shit and like be okay. And maybe I can be okay too if I do that.
And do you feel that completing this book changed you in some way? Or moved you somewhere?
Yeah, there were parts of it, like the Miss Cantor essay. It took me this long to recognize how that was a positive experience in a way because of Mr. Frizzell. You got to read the book to understand that.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
A great story.
But it honestly just feels like a relief because I feel like I spent my first 5 years in Hollywood just doing what I thought I was supposed to do. Even when it comes down to like how you dress and like what magazines you do and like posting shots of like, oh my God, this is an amazing designer I'm wearing, and it's like cool if that's your thing, but that's never really been my thing. Like I'm not a person who goes to fashion shows. Like I'm a girl who harmonized on the bus with the other musical theater kids. Like it's just a relief to just like be me and not try to be glossy. Be red instead.
The cheese ball lady, the lady who found enlightenment in a cheese ball. No. I think that's a good arc frame to start us off.
And I didn't cry.
And you didn't cry.
Because you didn't ask me about the sexual harassment, that's why.
Yeah, did you want me to?
No.
Okay, yay! Yeah, you can.
If you want to read it, you get it. There's plenty of stuff on the
just
internet.
go on YouTube. There's like 10 interviews, and it lays it all out.
I was horribly harassed and abused. And
yes.
But we
yeah, but it's
there.
It's all on YouTube. It's all
talk about it.
20 million views. So,
yeah.
Okay.
I will talk about it if you have a question. Truly, I like people to honestly ask their questions.
Okay.
So,
and on that note, perhaps we
questions.
can do some questions.
Yeah. Hey, Candace. Question for you. What's your favorite bakery in Los Angeles? And I have some recommendations.
Oh, my favorite bakery is Proof in Atwater Village.
Okay, Proof.
Oh.
Okay. Have you been to Justa in Venice?
It's a little far from Atwater Village.
It's really good.
That's west side, and I'm east side, but I haven't. I'll have to check it out.
What do you like at Proof?
I like their savory croissants. They make these ham and Gruyere croissants.
Oh.
Amazing.
I actually have one question.
You can have two. It's okay.
Sounds like a mixer.
Okay, I'll intertwine them into one. Okay, so I'm gonna give a tiny bit of context. I actually am very emotional as well, so I'm super grateful that you're able to open yourself up because it's often very hard to open myself up since I come from a family of Chinese immigrants, and they often tell me that like, you know, you can't show your weakness or you can't show like things that make you weak.
Yeah.
How do you think young people like me, I'm a high school student, but how can you think young people like me can hold spaces for these hard discussions? And then because I'm actually a part of a program called the Basil Scholars Program, and I'm creating a community project, and I wanted to ask, because I love you so much, if you could be like a, okay, would you be able to like maybe be like a stakeholder or like maybe just reach out later?
Her handlers are going to close in the wall of handlers. Yeah, the PR team from New York is like.
I will say though, it is very difficult being a naturally emotional person growing up in a less emotional family. I think I don't like giving advice, but if I were to give advice, rather than trying to force your family to be something they're not, because some people just aren't naturally emotional, find sort of the people who speak your language, your emotional language. I was very lucky that I found community theater really early, where emotions and extroversion and people being different was celebrated. Like, being gay was like considered really horrible when I was a kid. All the gay kids were in community theater because it was the only place where it was cool to be different. It was cool to have feelings. It was cool to be flamboyant. So I don't know if you do theater, that was what it was for me. And I think that was my saving grace, having theater, and I think finding a community that is like-minded is really important.
Hi, I was wondering which essay was the hardest one for you to write?
Probably the one about being sexually harassed on the set of Fresh Off the Boat. Yeah, because it was, I really wanted to, that was the last one I wrote. I didn't even want to include it. I just wrote it as an exercise because my publisher was pushing me, and I sort of wanted to put that chapter behind me, and it was really painful to go back through those memories, and it was also really painful to write and be like, if somebody reads this, they're going to be like, your story's not that bad. It's not like he raped you. But it's like, it also shouldn't happen, you know? And I think it still happens to this day, like if I have a meeting with a male producer, there's at least 10% of my brain that's like, I'm going to name drop, not name drop, but like drop that I have a baby and a partner, just so it's like clear that nothing's going to happen. And if 10% of my brain is preoccupied with that, gosh, how much better could I be if I used that 10% for something creative and awesome? And the fact that women have to do that sometimes, that sort of politicking around guys' wounded egos. No, it's true. You have to do that sometimes. Like, it's a loss because if you had, you know, if I was a guy and I went to that meeting, I don't have to worry about that. If it's another straight guy, I could just talk about the project with 100% of my brain. Anyway, but yeah, that was the hardest one for me to write. Yeah, thanks for asking.
What's your advice for someone who wants to get into the entertainment industry?
Always be true to yourself, and you really gotta stick to your true friendships, because that's what we do in acting. It's about our relationships. So you know, if your best friend is going through a hard time and needs you, but Elton John's having a party, go hang out with your best friend. That's your people. The fancy stuff, whatever, that comes and goes. Fart in the wind. Just, be true to yourself and be true to your people. It is a fart in the wind. It's a release to get it out. It's very strong and powerful, and then it goes away. But your friendship lasts. Yeah.
Hi, I'm over here, Vicky. And
Hi.
You speak really openly about you seeking therapy and using it on your journey. And I am a teacher, so I'm not going to have a brief question, sorry. Having taught high school in a fairly Asian community, I experienced a lot of pushback when I tried to seek help for some of my students. Is there any advice or any words of wisdom you can give for, our peoples in terms of, accepting that you can get help and that there's no shame or weakness in that?
Gosh, I don't know. I feel bad for your position because it must be hard because it's as a parent myself, it's weird when somebody else tells you how you should parent your kid. So I could understand a parent being no, I don't think therapy is good, and how dare you tell me how to parent my kid. I could understand the defensiveness, but I also know the value of therapy. So I think in a way it's kind of like banned books. You can't really protect your kids from it. They're gonna find porn anyway, So it's not that I was about to say so you should make it available to them, but I meant banned books. Don't make porn readily available to them. But I do think you should make conversations about porn readily available to, I think communication about it should be, so you know what, your parents aren't into this. This is something that's available for you if you want it. Just like this book that some people don't like, it's available to you. You can take from it what you want, or you could not read it, listen to your parents. But I don't know, I'm gonna have to deal with these kind of things when my kid grows up, I'm sure. So yeah, it's hard, but I'm glad that you're thinking about it and that it shows how much you care. So your students already have it really great because it seems like you care a lot.
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Erin. I'm a second year in USC trying to pursue the entertainment industry.
Cool.
I just want to first say I think it's cool that you are expressing your big emotions. I think it validates a lot of Asian American women trying to pursue it. And even though you shouldn't be the one having to have these hard conversations, I know that there's such a large audience that is very appreciative of it. That being said, you mentioned being like sitting in your groundedness when being faced with these hard questions and being faced with these very difficult situations that you shouldn't have been in the first place. I just wanted to ask if that was natural, or how did you build to that, and how did you take care of yourself
through that process? It was not natural. That took a really, really long time. It took me going to like my lowest point. I think I was like $40,000 in credit card debt, didn't know how I was going to pay my rent. A boyfriend had just dumped me again. And then I started reading a Brene Brown book, right? And no, it was helpful. The Gifts of Imperfection. Truly, you guys should read it. It's great. And she talks about being worthy now, as is. Not when you lose 10 pounds. Not when you finally get that promotion. You are worthy of love exactly now in your $40,000 credit card debt thing. but I think what I asked myself at that time was like, if you're still a waitress when you're 50 and you're still going to acting class and pursuing that, are you okay with that? And I answered that question and I said, you know what, I am. There's actually no shame in being a waitress and working in the service industry. There's no shame in that. Other people assign shame to that. That's not cool. And most people actually, their occupation that pays their bills is not their main passion. Their passion is their family or cool cars or whatever. But I think what really gave me that groundedness was understanding that I could create value from within, knowing about how much my art meant to me, rather than using employment as external validation, money as external validation, boyfriends as external validation. If you can create value from within, nobody can take away from you. People can take away your money, they can take away your boyfriend, your beauty. They can't take away what you generate within yourself. And when I recognized that, I became very powerful. I felt very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We feel it.
Okay. Hello. So I thought your take on accents was very interesting, and it was really refreshing hearing it being positively framed. So what do you think the line is for Hollywood to represent the immigrant or ethnic story respectfully versus disrespectfully?
I think it has to be authentic. I think it has to be written and directed and starring the people who know the experience. That's it. True. It has to be true. There's on there.
Oh. Hi. I was wondering, since you got success in your 30s as opposed to your 20s, I was wondering, how do you think that affected you as a person, and how do you think that affected your book?
Oh my God, if I had gotten success in my 20s, I would be such a jerk. Seriously, and there are these very false bullshit rumors that go around that I'm difficult to work with and a diva, which is 100% bullshit, complete lie. I'm very joyful to work with, actually. I truly am.
You actually, yes.
But, it's made up because people wanted to paint me in this, villainous thing. I forgot your question now that I was caught up in the thing. What was it? How? Oh, yeah, being an asshole. If I got success in my 20s. No, but it teaches to have to go through rejection for so many years, have to wait tables for 12 years and really pound the pavement, to work for it, to study and train for it and still get fucking rejected, and then to realize, you know what? I make it inside. It's not what they give me, it's what I make inside. That's my value. That's worthy now. And I only was able to do that when I hit my 30s, truly. Even though I pretended, because when you're in drama school, they have older actors come and give you advice, and the older actors are like, you just gotta not give a fuck. And so what I did was I pretended to not give a fuck, but you can't, if you care, you care. You can't, if you care about getting the job, you just do. But if you create your value from within, then you don't care as much about getting the job, and then you actually don't give a fuck, and then you start booking roles. It's kind of crazy how it happens, but it's gotta be really true, and you can't just fake that you aren't seeking external validation. If you are seeking external validation, it's gonna come out even if you pretend you aren't.
Hi, my name is Mahnur. I'm wondering, I'm back here.
I can't see any of you guys, but yeah.
Considering the progressive and inclusive direction Hollywood is trying to go in recently, I'm wondering, what do you think, or what do you hope your legacy will be in terms of your work representing Asian American roles? And do you think you have a responsibility, if any? Do you want there to be some kind of responsibility in the legacy you choose to have?
Gosh, legacy is such a heavy word. I don't really think in terms of that, because I think my legacy is already fucked because I'm difficult to work with. It's so not true, guys. I'm a fucking joy. I am.
You are a joy.
I'm a joy to work with.
You're a joy. Yeah.
I think my responsibility to the Asian community, to my legacy, quote unquote, is the exact same responsibility that I assigned to myself, which is to be true. To be true and faithful, to practice what I do with the utmost sincerity. Look at that. I put it in
I know. You're Pima Trojan. Move aside. You are a healer. You are.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Rochelle. You've done acting in theater, movie, TV. Is there anything else that's left on your bucket list?
Well, one thing I really wanted to do was a movie musical, but I just did that with Lyle Lyle Crocodile. But I want to do one, yes. But I want to do one where I get to do even more song and dance. Yeah, I love song and dance. I love musicals. So it was always my dream to do Shakespeare in the Park in New York. And, I'm talking with them, so we'll see. But those kind of things, a lot of the things that are, instead of being the big fancy Hollywood things, going back to my roots and the things I loved, authentically inside, that's what I want to do. Musicals, Shakespeare in the Park, that kind of stuff, yeah. Cool, thanks everybody. Yay!